Glenn Melton leaned against the cold marble bar, his vision blurred slightly from the liquor. Spring break had a way of becoming a ritual for Glenn and his friends, week-long stretches of drinking, dancing, and chasing fleeting moments of excitement. Glenn, a rich and carefree college student, loved the chaos. It was his escape from the polished life he led under the shadow of his father's accounting firm. The night air was thick with the sound of music, and the beach party was in full swing. Glenn was on his third drink when he noticed her. A girl, dancing with reckless abandon near the bonfire, the flames casting a warm glow on her tanned skin. What caught Glenn's eye wasn't just her beauty, but the small tattoo on her shoulder, the name Chelsea scrawled elegantly in black ink. For reasons he couldn't explain, Glenn felt drawn to her. He pushed his way through the crowd and tapped her on the shoulder. "Chelsea?" he called, his voice loud to cut through the music. She turned, her bright blue eyes meeting his. She looked at him, surprised, but then smiled. "Do I know you?" she asked, half laughing, clearly tipsy like he was. "You do now," Glenn grinned, extending his hand. "I'm Glenn." Without hesitation, Chelsea grabbed his hand, and just like that, they were inseparable for the rest of the night. The drinks kept flowing, and the party moved from the beach to various bars. Somewhere along the way, amid the dancing and laughter, they ended up at Glenn's hotel room. The alcohol had washed away all inhibitions, and they fell into each other's arms, lost in the heat of the moment. The next morning, Glenn woke up with a pounding headache. The room was quiet, the sunlight too bright as it streamed through the curtains. He turned over, expecting to see Chelsea beside him, but the bed was empty. "Where did she go?" he muttered, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. Her things were gone, no trace of her except the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. Glenn searched the resort for her that day but came up empty. He didn't even know her last name. As the week wore on, Glenn pushed thoughts of Chelsea aside. After all, it was spring break. There were other parties to attend and more friends to meet. On one particularly wild night, Glenn ended up in bed with another girl, Becky, a fellow student from his college. It was all part of the spring break chaos. Back in the real world, after spring break ended, Glenn threw himself into his schoolwork. But one weekend, as he and his friends recounted the craziness of their week away, Glenn found himself thinking about Chelsea again. Who was she? Why had she disappeared so suddenly? He mentioned her name to his friend Bob, who shot him a knowing look. "Hope you use protection, bro," Bob said with a smirk. Glenn's heart sank. He hadn't even thought about that in his drunken state. "Oh God, I don't think I did," Glenn muttered, suddenly feeling a wave of panic. "You should get tested, man," Bob suggested, more serious now. Taking his advice, Glenn called his doctor's office. He was lucky to get an appointment the same day due to cancellation. His nerves rattled the entire time, but the results, when they came, were a relief. The doctor had called him in the next day and said with a raised eyebrow, "You've been busy, haven't you, Mr. Melton?" Glenn could only manage a nervous laugh. "Guess so." Everything came back clean. "Be more careful next time," the doctor warned. Glenn sighed, relief washing over him. Thank you, God. But just as he thought he could put spring break behind him, 6 weeks later, Becky called him, asking to meet. She sounded serious. They met at a small park near campus. Becky, usually confident and carefree, looked anxious as she sat down beside him. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice flat. "And you're the father." Glenn's mind raced. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Becky nodded, her eyes firm. "I took the test. You were the only one." Glenn felt the weight of the situation hit him like a tidal wave. "What do you want to do?" he asked quietly. I'm keeping the baby, Becky said with resolve. I don't expect us to be together, but I want you to take responsibility. From that moment, Glenn knew his life had changed. He stepped up, attending doctor's appointments with Becky and eventually being in the delivery room when their daughter, Amanda, was born. Though Glenn and Becky never became a couple, they worked out a co-parenting arrangement, sharing custody of Amanda as she grew into a bright, independent young woman. Years passed, and Amanda was now in college, navigating her own life as a student. On her campus, she had recently become close with a girl named Anna. They were practically inseparable, sharing several classes and even similar birthdays. They had the same sense of humor, the same fiery spirit, and, oddly enough, even looked alike. Other students often joked about whether they were sisters, and both girls laughed it off, thinking it was a funny coincidence. What Amanda didn't know was that the bond she felt with Anna was more than just friendship. One Sunday afternoon, Glenn arrived at Amanda's college to pick her up for the summer holidays. As he walked toward her dormitory, he noticed a woman walking ahead of him, her dark hair glistening in the sunlight. Something about her felt familiar, and when he saw the tattoo on her shoulder, Chelsea, in elegant black script, his heart skipped. Could it be her? He hadn't seen her since that spring break years ago. Chelsea? Glenn called out, his voice tentative. The woman stopped, turning slowly to face him. Her blue eyes widened in recognition. Glenn? From spring break? She asked, her voice filled with disbelief. Yeah, it's me, Glenn replied, his mind reeling. What happened? You were gone the next morning. I looked everywhere for you. Chelsea gave a soft, regretful smile. I got a call that morning, a family emergency. I had to leave immediately. I didn't even know your last name, so I couldn't contact you. Before either of them could say more, Anna appeared, walking toward Chelsea. Mom, I've been waiting for you, she called. Glenn's world spun. Mom? He repeated, his voice full of disbelief as he looked between Anna and Chelsea. Chelsea nodded slowly, and before she could respond, Amanda came running toward them from the other direction. Dad, I've been waiting for you, she called out, glancing at Anna and Chelsea. The two girls, Amanda and Anna, looked at each other, then back at their parents, confusion written all over their faces. Amanda frowned. Do you know my dad? She asked Anna. Anna shook her head, confused. No, but Chelsea's my mother. The truth dawned on Glenn, Chelsea, and the two girls all at once. Remember the story I told you about your father, sweetheart? I think this is him. Anna's eyes filled with tears, and she turned to Glenn, her voice breaking. Are you my dad? Glenn, overwhelmed with emotion, nodded. I think so. Anna hugged him tightly, tears soaking his shirt. Amanda, standing beside them, looked on in disbelief. Wait, I have a sister? She whispered. Chelsea wiped away her tears and smiled. Yes, you do. The two girls, still in shock, embraced, both of them crying softly. It was a moment of both confusion and joy. A reunion they never expected, but welcomed all the same. Glenn, feeling the weight of the years lift off his shoulders, looked at Chelsea. Let's get the girls' stuff from their dorms. We need to talk this all through. I'll rent a suite for the night and we can figure out what happens next, together. As the four of them walked toward the dorms, Glenn felt a new sense of hope. It was a long and winding road, but somehow they had all found their way back to each other. The past had finally caught up with him, but instead of chaos, it brought something he had never imagined. Family. This is Guiding Light Inspirational Stories. Thank you for watching. You are awesome!